Hello and welcome to another episode of the e-commerce coffee break. Today we want to talk about problems that merchants might have when they work within emerging markets. Obviously, first world countries have a good infrastructure. If you're coming to developing or emerging markets, that might be completely different, and it might be a good idea to look into your own fulfillment services. Therefore, with me today on the show, I have Max Rust. He is the co-founder of Klar at getklar.com. Max has helped more than 100 DTC brands solve their expansion and growth issues, so he has a vast background when it comes to growing businesses. He has started business in Chinese in Germany and Shanghai. After that, he came to South Africa, where he became the chief marketing officer at Zalando, the country's largest online fashion retailer. After that, he worked as CMO at Autonova, a digital private health insurance, and then also at YFood, one of the top D2C food companies in Europe that does 100 million euros in revenue, and he grew the marketing team from 15 to 45 people over time. Now, Max, as I said, has a lot of background in the field of e-commerce, of growing businesses, and that's what I'm going to talk about. So first of all, hello, Max, how are you today?
Hi, Klaus. Thank you for the invitation. All going well. Thank you.
Give me a bit of background. What got you into e-commerce? What got you into marketing and growing businesses?
Yeah, I mean, you already gave quite a bit of background of myself, so that kind of really explains it. I came down from Shanghai to Cape Town, and originally I only wanted to stay for a short period of time and continue my studies after. But then, fell in love with the city, fell in love with growing companies, e-commerce businesses, and originally for the first year was having more of a BI related role, but then after a year, there was a bit of a management change in the company. My former boss became the new MD, and he knew that I was good with numbers, and he said like, "Hey Max, I don't know what's going on in marketing. Just dive in, see what's going on, and fix it." And that's kind of I got thrown into the deep end, and yeah, that's how it all started.
Okay, so we have some similarities there. I'm in Cape Town since 2007. Was never planned. Now it's 17 years. Obviously, Cape Town, a great city. Now, when it comes to emerging markets like South Africa here, for example, there are very specific issues that someone who's working in Europe or in America is not aware of. What were the struggles when you started your business here?
Yeah, so I mean, to be frank, we were part of a group that was like a larger Africa group that's now Jumia, which is like the first tech unicorn in Africa. And I think South Africa is still a bit different to the rest of Africa. It's probably like more of a hybrid country in that way. But in general, and also now speaking to about what I learned from the other countries, I mean, the biggest concern was, and we still have that in developed markets in some way, but it's trust. People generally, they think everything that's online is a scam. Even if you're like a super established company, like literally everything that is online is a scam. And then also, which is why, the dominant payment method that we had at Zalando was cash on delivery, where you literally, pay cash to the person handing you the package, because then people could be sure that they only we're paying when they got the product and not being scammed.
Okay, no, makes total sense. Obviously, yes, payment processing in countries very, very different. If you are specifically here in South Africa, I know a lot of people do not have bank accounts. They don't have credit cards. So if you want to deliver, then obviously you have to find a way to offer a way to do that for them. The other way, obviously, or the other problem that I saw with a couple of businesses that I started here was specifically the distances. Specifically, South Africa is a vast country. So getting a physical product to someone who is in the middle of nowhere, hours and hours away from the next big city, can be really a struggle. So now focusing a little bit on the fulfillment services, how did you grow in this area?
So yeah, that was also a big issue, because we essentially started by building out our own last mile delivery, right? So we now have, in developed countries, we have a bunch of different providers, food providers, like food delivery and everything, that do their last mile delivery themselves. We already did that 10 years ago, only for the major cities. So I think we did Joburg and Cape Town first, and then we added Durban after. So I think after like 2 years or something, 70% of our last mile delivery was actually done by ourselves, just because the infrastructure in place there was not really good. The prices were extremely high, especially for remote areas. You had massive surcharges on the delivery. Also, if you deliver stuff into townships, there were like massive premiums you had to pay in order to get that stuff delivered. So some of the things that we did were not really profitable from like a simple unit economics perspective, but we still did them because we wanted to be able to claim, free nationwide delivery. So also some of the logistics stuff was pretty poorly done for marketing reasons, again, to build up that trust. We also had added a 3-hour delivery in Cape Town where our warehouse was situated. And that was, not because people needed 3-hour delivery for fashion back then, especially, but it was just kind of to communicate, hey, if these guys can deliver something in 3 hours, I can also trust them to deliver something to me in like 2 or 3 days. So that was like pretty much just a trust building marketing play and had not really anything to do with like a real customer need.
Mm-hmm. Definitely a good idea on marketing to sort of over deliver if you can, even if people do not expect that. That definitely builds trust. Now, in these emerging markets, not a lot of people, or by now, specifically in South Africa and through the pandemic, are getting used to doing things online and buying stuff online. When you started, what's the biggest problem there? You said the payment was one problem, delivery was another problem. Were there any other issues?
Tons of issue, but now if we talk like the emerging markets specifically, it was also access to internet. We actually had MTN as an investor and also in the group, which is like one of the largest telco networks in the continent. So similar to like a T-Mobile or an AT&T you might have in the US. And we then negotiated with them to basically make data to our site free. So basically people could browse our site without having been charged data on their plans, which obviously then made it much easier to access our site and actually buy stuff. So that was another thing that was, I say, market specific. That was a kind of like a big pain to overcome.
Obviously, in these markets, there's a steep learning curve. We had this with our company that we started a couple of years, the same issue. It's interesting that you sort of need to educate your potential customer on a lot of different levels. We had people calling in saying they don't trust typing in their credit card details on the website. They just want to give us the credit card details over the phone, which obviously is a much bigger issue for a company dealing with the data. Now, with getklar.com, tell me a little bit about what you do nowadays. It's something that's
Sure.
with a lot of data, and I think will help on a global scale.
Yeah. So when I was at YFood, like you mentioned, we grew quite rapidly, and I kind of saw, you now have Shopify, you have like a Klaviyo, like tools that are easy to set up, get scaled quite well as the company grows. And YFood was still mostly on spreadsheets and Data Studio at the time to manage all the data, but like things were getting pretty complicated. The team was getting bigger, and I was looking for like a central place to manage everything, similar to like a Shopify or Klaviyo. And took a bunch of demos, and nothing really, was to the level where I would have liked it, and I built it myself in the past. So that's something I started doing. It's kind of like we call it a single source of truth. So you can basically connect all your data sources. We pull data from their APIs on a daily basis or multiple times per day, but then you can also configure them to actually reflect your reality. So especially small, medium e-commerce brands, they often have quite messy data. And if you just assume a very one-size-fits-all model, the data is oftentimes just maybe directionally correct, but not actually accurate to make decisions on. So we built like a customization and configuration layer on top of that, so that you can configure your data sources and you get to your reality very quickly. Plus, we also integrate the entire variable cost structure so that you can get your product cost, logistics cost, transaction costs on a, again, very detailed level, with allowing you then to kind of create cohort reportings with an integrated P&L, allow you to slice and dice your customers based on customer lifetime value, based on what channel did they come from, what product did they buy, and all those sorts of things.
Okay, a couple of questions there. Can you break it down in country-specific markets? We're talking about companies delivering globally or to specific
Yeah,
countries?
that's fine. So there's two ways. Either you have a multi-shop setup that you have different shops for different countries. We support that, or we just use the shipping country from the delivery address in order to break it up.
Mm-hmm. That possibly then goes also for currencies and currency exchange rates and stuff like that. Is that right? Or
so we have two different ways. There's two different solutions to it. The one is when you have like a different shop, like a different shop system. For each currency, that's something we already support. If you have like multiple currencies within one shop system, it's not being normalized, and also different currencies between a shop system and an ad account, and you basically want to convert stuff into one currency, that's something we're building in the next few months to support. But yeah.
Okay, cool. Who's the perfect customer for your system?
Yeah, so we focus on like our customer that we build for, I mean, obviously we have a bit of a wider range of people who use the tool, but when we think about feature development, we kind of look at brands doing like 3 to 10 million in annual revenue. They probably don't really have their own BI team yet, or the BI team is severely understaffed and can't really deliver at that scale that they really need. And yeah, that's kind of like who we're looking at specifically, currently supporting Shopify as a shop system, but adding also additional shop systems like a WooCommerce in the near future.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What would be your golden nugget to give someone who is trying to expand their business, their online business, to emerging markets? So sitting like, for instance, in Germany, and they're thinking about they want to start selling in like South Africa as an example, or anywhere else.
I mean, the question first of all is why. I guess it's not really the most low-hanging fruit to get into. So probably like emerging markets, I think, have an extremely tough trade-off from like a complexity to short-term return. So I think if you go into an emerging market right now, oftentimes it's a bit more of a long-term play. You need to be in it for a long haul. Otherwise, I think the cost to benefit ratio short-term is not really worth it for most markets. And then, yeah, just be aware that those places are, culturally also very different. And probably even like within the country, there are many different cultures that are quite unique. That may not apply really to your product. So if you sell phone cases, that may not be as relevant as if you maybe sell fashion products, there's also levels to that. But usually these countries are very different and also quite diverse within them.
Okay, no, good point there. I think the part of that there is just a different culture there plays very strongly in it. I have seen that in the past from businesses who try to start a German business, in brackets, German business that was doing very well in Germany, doing the same thing in South Africa, and a lot of them didn't make it because it was just not accepted the way they were doing business, or the product was just not hitting the market in that way.
And it sounds obvious, but it's also often something that's just overlooked, and you don't feel like it's as severe as it actually turns out to be. I mean, when we expanded YFood, we were just doing that across Europe, from Germany, we kind of had to relearn quite a lot of stuff also. A couple of things transferred, but many things also we had to kind of like really start from scratch and kind of understand what's new, what's different.
I think that's the challenges of being an entrepreneur. It's lifelong learning, being surprised about the things that you're guessing, and then it turns out completely different. Where can people find out more about Klar?
So you mentioned the website, getklar.com is a great place. Also, otherwise on my LinkedIn, I'm quite active, sharing what I learn, from all the data that we gather from the brands and sharing the best highlights from that.
Sounds great. Cool. I will put both of the links in the show notes and people can click through and get directly to it. Cool. Thanks so much, Max, for your time. It was very insightful, and I hope you get a lot of people trying out Klar and implementing that into their business. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, Klaus.
Bye-bye.
Bye.